So I'm actually a fairly new ship staff member.
Okay.
Yeah. So
And where do you live?
I live in California.
What part of California?
Lake Arrowhead.
Lake Arrowhead, down south.
Yeah, south.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went to school in Santa Barbara, and I grew up in San Jose.
Oh, nice. That's a beautiful area.
Yeah.
Yeah. We used to go with my family up to Santa Barbara, and it's always fond memories of traveling there because it's beautiful to drive up there
Drive up, the
certain parts,
beach.
and
Yeah.
so that's a lovely area. Have you been in California your whole life?
No, I moved around. So I was born in Mexico, and then I moved to the States when I was 2. My dad worked for Hewlett Packard, so immigrated to the United States. And I pretty much started growing up here. And when I was 10, I moved back to Mexico, back to Guadalajara. I lived 6 years in Guadalajara.
Did 6
like
years?
it's like
Like it's a prison.
right? And no, it's the best 6 year. I loved it, and it really defined who I am as an individual. It was a very up until that point, I was I'm blonde, I'm blue eyed, I barely spoke Spanish, right? I moved here when I was 2, and now I'm 10, right? I'm an American, I'm a gringo, right?
Gringo, yeah.
And so I moved back to Mexico, and I learned all about my culture. I really get to learn it. I grew up speaking Spanish. My parents spoke Spanish in the house, but I don't know it until you live it. So I fell in love with Mexico. I lived there till I was 16, so 6 years, and I came back to the States begrudgingly. I didn't want to move back,
Wow.
but I finished high school. I did my junior and senior year in high school, and I went off to college in Santa Barbara, and I've been here ever since to the 11th grade. So long
Wow.
time.
Yeah.
Long time.
So yeah, that's a really interesting story. I also was born in Mexico and came here when I was 6.
Okay.
But I had the opposite. I never went back, and I do feel like it's funny working here at SHPE and talking with the members has allowed me to kind of get in touch with my roots
Oh,
again.
absolutely.
Yeah, so it's been pretty great.
Absolutely. I struggle with that quite a bit, being blonde and blue-eyed, and like everybody's like, they ask me, "What's your name?" I'm like, Julio. Well, you don't look like a Julio. And if
Yeah,
I had a penny for every time I've heard that, but here at SHPE, I found a place. I mean, I hear it here all the time, and people make fun of me because I'm blonde and blue-eyed, and that's never going to go away.
right.
But I found a place where I could proudly be who I was and surround myself by my culture, even though I've always felt like an outsider. Because again, I wasn't accepted in the U.S. because I was Mexican at an early age, and then go to Mexico and like, who's this güero who barely speaks Spanish, and he speaks Spanish with a very American accent, right? Like, you're not Mexican. So, I was, shunned by, my own people, by Mexicans, right? And I'm here, I'm shunned also. So I never felt like I fit in. And SHPE is giving me a place to fit. Even though I still don't feel like it, it's amazing. I've been doing this for 33 years now at SHPE. And people recognize me and they come find me and I get hugs. And even though I still feel like that güero from outside, this is family. I love doing this. And this is just as much for me professional development, much more earlier on in my career than it is now. But it's also my place to give back to the community. So it's my philanthropy kind of part of my life, but it's also a big part of where I feel family, right? And I've got friends and a legacy, and I think everybody in life strives to find one thing that they can latch onto for their life and have that and leave an indelible mark in that.
Yeah.
And for me, it's not by design, but all of a sudden I look back and I'm just like, oh wow, I've been doing this for 10, 15, 20 years. I look back this morning as I was doing my workshop, I'm like, man, I've been doing this for 33 years.
Wow.
I was in their chair. It's in NELA in 1993.
Wow.
Right? What is that? 93. That's 30 years ago. I came as a student. So it's SHPE is an amazing organization that gives in different places throughout different parts of your career.
Yeah.
And it's really neat to know that that's there, right? I think it's like the quintessential definition of a network. Like, you don't know what you need it for, but you know you need it, and it evolves over time. And it's always been there for me to help me through personal things. I struggled with cancer about 3 years ago. And a big reason for me to keep fighting was to come back and and continue to give back to SHPE. So it's been very much of that part of my personal life journey, as much as it's been professional development, as much as it's been helping others. So
Yeah.
my cultural journey has been very interesting, being an outsider, but SHPE has played like such a huge part of me finding a community, being able to identify, being able to help, right? Because if I wasn't doing this, I can't picture myself doing anything else.
Right. Yeah. Well, let's dig a little deeper into Julio. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what it is that you do now?
So I'm a director of innovation services at Procter & Gamble. I'm a cat herder. I have a degree in chemical engineering, and my job right now is to connect people and technology and find a way to bring new digital technologies to life, right? So it's about understanding the users. It's about understanding what the technology is capable of. It's about understanding why we need it at Procter & Gamble, and working to bring all that to life. Been doing that for about 4 years now. It's like the third stage of my career. I started with P&G straight out of college in Sacramento, California. I started in manufacturing, worked manufacturing and engineering. So at P&G manufacturing, we make the product. In engineering, we're building the place that makes the product. And so I spent the first 12 years of my career doing that, and always working again, up against the digital space, computers, technology. Yeah, my family, my mom, my dad called me gadget guy because I always had to have the latest gadget. So I was always butting up against that area, but my education was chemical engineering. So I was in a chemical manufacturing plant doing electrical design work, computer work, and it was this really interesting mix about what I studied and what I was more passionate about. And about 9 years into my career path, I was at a SHPE conference, and I met the P&G SHPE recruiting team. Well, I had come to SHPE as an individual. I came and participated not because my company was sending me, but because I saw value in coming as a professional. And it was through one of the conferences that I met the P&G recruiting team. I didn't know we had a recruiting team. I had no idea. And I met the P&G recruiting team. And through that, I made some friendships and I expanded my network, right? And one of the people that I met was Miguel Alemany, the current CEO of SHPE. He used to work for P&G, and he was the SHPE team leader. And we developed a friendship, a work friendship, right? And throughout the years, I was talking to him. I sought him out as a mentor. He helped me, at P&G. And in one of those conversations, he said, "Hey, I think you have a career in R&D." So I jumped all over that, and I made a career change to go from the manufacturing engineering space over to R&D. And he opened some doors for me with got me some interviews, got me the opportunity to talk to some folks. And one of those opportunities panned out, and I jumped into R&D, did that for 11 years.
Wow.
And towards the end of those 11 years, I was back up against that digital space, working against, the computer systems and the databases and the gadgets again. That at that point, I'm like, well, twice is no longer a coincidence, right? And that's when I sought to jump over to IT. So now I work in IT, and I happen to support the systems that we use in manufacturing, engineering, and R&D. So the first 24 years of my career were all about learning how to use and doing the work. And now I build the tools, I create the digital solutions, I manage some of the digital, not all of them, that we use, that I would have used in those first 24 years of my career. So it's a really neat way to tie it all together. But yeah, that's what I do. I'm focused on creating or bringing to life a cloud lab technology at P&G. So there are analytical life sciences laboratories out there that through coding at your desk, you can run an experiment remotely. And you can run 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, 15, as many as you want in parallel. Wow. Because these facilities have the technology and the equipment to run that. All you need to do is learn how to cook.
Right.
So that's the challenge, right? Because you have PhD scientists that are, analytical chemists. They're not computer coders. That's not what they do. That's not what they want to do. So how do you close that gap?
Yeah.
And that's the work that I do. I work on identifying the need of my scientists. We know I've got coders. How do I get them together? How do I make that all happen so that my scientist can go run not just one experiment when he or she's in the lab, but they can run infinite number of experiments as long as they've got materials to sample or materials to test against. So it's a really neat technology, just getting it started up. It's changing the way we do work at P&G, and I lead that program. So it's a really cool job, really cool project, a lot of ownership. It's going to be up to me and my team to make it work. So we're excited about that.
Wow. That sounds incredible. It sounds like you're making amazing things happen and that you've had quite the journey to get there. I'm glad that you're able to tell us about what you're doing, because you started off as an engineering student, which is what our members are, right? They're
Right.
in that period of their life where they're working towards getting to where you are now.
Right.
And so why don't you tell us a little bit about what that journey was like for you, from what made you decide to get into STEM in the first place?
I've got the worst answer for you.
That's okay.
I decided to become an engineer not because I was passionate about it, but because I knew what I didn't want to do. Right. And I think this is a bad way to choose one's life, is to run away from something, when I think we should always be running towards something. But I was good at math in high school. I was good at science, chemistry, physics. They came easy. I was not good at history. I was not good at English. I hated reading. Just not my cup of tea.
Sure.
So when I put 2 and 2 together, I'm like, well, I think I'm going to be an engineer. I grew up in a house of STEM folks. My dad was a PhD in physics. My mom was a biologist. My oldest brother was a material science engineer. My other brother, who was still in college at the time, was studying to become a computer engineer, and I was trying to pick my degree. So I knew I didn't want to do English or history or any of the the social sciences, but I wanted to do math, sciencey type stuff. And so I'm looking at engineering. I'm like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And my grandfather had given me a book. My grandfather, a man that I looked up to a lot, his hobby was chemistry. And the book that he had given me, that he dedicated to me, was a 1924 chemist's handbook.
Wow.
So mind you, this is 1989 that I'm deciding what degree, right? 1988, 89, right? So this book is way out of date, 64 years out of date. But just the fact that you give it to me, chemistry, right? It was such an important book. I still have it. And I was decent, good at math, sciences. I'm like, well, I'll be a chemical engineer. When I really should have been like an electrical engineer or physicist. Because as I went into college and I started taking my classes, those are the classes I did best at. Those are the classes that I love physics. And to this day, put a documentary, I read about it. Science Friday, anything with science, like physics related, I love it. And electrical engineering, well, because that's been kind of my passion, right? That's where I've been getting into electronics, and I did a lot of computer programming and electrical systems design early on in my career. I work on digital solutions now, so always in that digital computer space. So that's what I should have studied.
I think there's a good lesson there, though, because I think sometimes students are kind of scared that they're getting towards the end of their classes. They're about to graduate and start this career, and they might feel like, well, now that I've done all the classes, I don't know if this was the right choice, right? But there's hope, right?
There is.
Tell us about that.
So, yeah, I think for me, the best way to bring it to life is I still don't know what I want to do. And there was a speech written, there was a journalist out of the Chicago Tribune, I think, is where she worked. And she did the exercise one day that if she ever got asked to write a commencement speech, what would she write? So it's this faux commencement speech. It got put to music. It's called Wear Sunscreen. And there's a line in this song or in this speech that says, the most interesting 40-year-olds I know still don't know what they want to do with their life, right? So the boat's left on the 40-year-old for me, but I still don't know what I want to do with my life. And I think that that's been the blessing for me at P&G for a couple reasons. When you join a company like P&G that is about your personal growth and development, it's a company that's interested in you as an individual and a career path, right? They invest in you to develop you. And we quickly, when you work with somebody, you fairly quickly can identify if that person's a good fit for your company, for your team, for the project you're on, whatever, right?
Yeah.
In a meeting or two or three or four, you find out pretty quickly. So at P&G, they recognized the potential in me and they helped me figure out what it was that I wanted to do with my career. I've had such a varied number of experiences. I consider myself a jack of all trades, a master of none. And I'm kind of proud of that, right? Because it means I'm flexible, I'm adaptable, I'm good at learning and starting over again. I'm not afraid to get my project canceled because guess what? There's going to be another project and I'm ready to move on to the next one. Maybe sometimes too fast. And I've moved around quite a bit my whole life, so I'm got used to starting over quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so I moved through change fairly quick. I have some friends, colleagues that I know that change is much more difficult for them.
Yeah.
So they move through it slower than I do, right? So I think my background enabled that. I think the fact that I've had this company that's really opened itself up to supporting me, letting me find my way. Of course, I've had to deliver along the way, right?
Of
You
course.
still got to do your job that you're hired to do. Might not be your favorite thing, might be the thing that you do while you're figuring it out. Still deliver, but I've had my journey along the way. And SHPE opened doors for me. P&G kind of opened those doors for me. All those opportunities of seeing different things has really helped me find my journey, because I haven't found my destination. I'm still trying to figure out what I'm better or best at.
Yeah.
But it's been empowering to know that I have that support. It's helped me to grow when I really didn't know, what I wanted to do. And that's what I tell people when I come in to recruit and when I'm hiring people, when I'm trying to convince, all these great candidates to come, apply at P&G, they tell me, well, I'm an aerospace engineer. I know psychologists. I work with a psych major that sits next to me and she does the same work that I do. She's not an engineer.
Yeah.
Right. So you telling me that your major isn't the mechanical or the chemical or electricals that we definitely hire the majority of, right? But I was talking to an aerospace engineer and saying, hey, what opportunities are there? Like, well, you're an aerospace engineer. Why are you interested in P&G? He's like, well, I'm trying to see where I could use my skill set. I'm like, well, as I thought through some of the things that we do, I don't know much about aerospace engineering, but I know they talk about air moving really fast, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking, well, I've got some machines, our diaper lines make diapers at these blinding speeds. At speeds so high that aerodynamics has to become a consideration.
Right.
Right? When you're making things of, the 10s and 20s and multiples and almost hundreds per second, like those velocities move air, right? So you have to do something with that. You have to design your equipment. You have to design your product. You have to design your packaging to withstand all that stuff. Boy, would I like to have an aerospace engineer kind of go look at some of those problems.
Right.
Right. So at a company that's big like P&G or other big corporations, you have that ability to move around, right? And you're not always going to work in your major. You're not always going to be an engineer. You might be an engineer that gets, goes up to senior management. At P&G, our last CEO started off as an engineer and made it all the way to the top of the company, right? So That's the great thing about PNG. That's the great thing about SHPE. It opens up all those doors. I have a company that's been very supportive. So it's been a neat journey. Scary. Still don't know what I want to do. But I know that I want to keep SHPE. I know I want to keep PNG. It's giving me the opportunities, and I'm always open to the next, to the next.
Perfect. Yeah. And so you mentioned SHPE.
Mm-hmm.
What was your first interaction with SHPE? How did you learn about it, and what was your involvement with it?
Oh man, I wish I could go back and find the exact date that I wrote that check. I joined SHPE 33 years ago, like next week, like this week, next week. It was in August in 1989. August of 1990. And I was going to Santa Barbara. I'd already decided I was going to go there. And back then it was the minority engineering program. It later became the multicultural engineering program. Now it's called DNI, right? They had a summer program called Summer Transition to Engineering Program, or STEP, where they brought in everybody that was in the multicultural engineering program for a 2-week immersion on campus. Stayed at the dorms, and you're going to take, like the first week of English, you're taking the first week of calculus, we're helping you, register for all your classes. This was before everything was online, right? So you had to go get the booklet and read the booklet to register for your classes in Scantrons. And we spent the week walking around campus, so that really when school started, we weren't complete newbies, right? We were familiar. We can kind of maybe not hit the ground running, but we were at least not a dead stop. And it was through that program that the Los Ingenieros, the SHPE chapter in Santa Barbara, that's where the advisor was and everything. So through that summer STEP program, the first thing we did, like that first night or the second night, was a SHPE NSBE meeting. So we all went to SHPE NSBE and we all got signed up. We were told you'll pay your $10 check, whatever it was, and you'll sign up. And we all signed up for SHPE. So I started. It was. I won't say I was forced to it, but I was. it was very much encouraged.
Compulsory signups.
There you go. Maybe that's what we need to do, get more membership.
Right.
But no, that's how I joined SHPE, and I was freshman rep. Like 4 weeks later, I got voted in as freshman rep. I was treasurer. I did co-chair. I did an external VP role. Did four roles. Friends for life. I still have friends that I went to college with that were in SHPE. They no longer are, because they no longer are engineering. They dropped out of engineering, right? So, but I have a lot of contacts. My network it's infinite. And I wouldn't say it's infinite. It's 13,000 strong, right? I mean, it's the whole.
I mean, it's continuously growing, right? So it could be infinite.
Yeah. Let's hope so. It's from day one.
Yeah.
It's so interwoven to who I am as an engineer, to who I am as a professional, that it's part of my DNA now.
I'm gonna take a wild guess and say that you had challenges in your path to becoming an engineer. And it might be challenges that some of our current chapter members are going through. Can you talk about some challenges that you had and how you overcame them?
5 years and 3 summers. 6 years. That's how long it took me to graduate with 1 degree out of Santa Barbara with a 3.02 GPA. I was not your top performer. I struggled. I struggled in school. I sucked at studying. I flunked Chemi 10, which is the class that you take in the fall of your first year. That's introduction to chemical engineering. And I flunked it. And I mean, I straight up flunked it. Like, what are you doing in the major? Conversation with Dr. Z. Dr. Zazadinsky was my professor. He's like, are you even in the right major?
Right.
Yeah, I am. And I had to wait a whole year to take that class over again. So that meant everybody that I started school with is a year ahead of me now.
Wow.
Right. So I have to make a new set of friends, new study mates and all that. And I struggled. I struggled. My grades weren't great. I struggled to do well. I struggled to find balance between activities and grades and focus. So much so that it actually showed up in my interview with P&G.
Wow.
The guy that was interviewing me, I remember the question. I remember the guy, but Ray was interviewing me. We're towards the end of the interview. He's asked all his questions, and he slows down, and he's like, "All right, so let's talk about your GPA." I'm like, oh, here we go. So I'm gonna get disqualified on GPAs or something. I'm like, it's a 3.02, and he's like, "Why?" And I'm like, oh, here he comes. He's gonna drill me on the GPA. What classes did you fail, pass? What was thermo, whatever, right?
Yeah.
I tell him, I'm like, well, I don't know where I got this answer, but I remember very clearly saying, well, if you're looking for a 4.0 student, bookworm, I'm not your guy. I'm balanced. I like to have fun. I'm a chapter president. I'm, involved in MIAS. I'm involved. I tutor. I'm mentoring. I work, right? I'm in a fraternity. I play soccer. I do all these other things.
I'm a normal human being.
I'm a normal human being. I didn't say that, but I'm like, I'm balanced. This is what I do, and I do a little bit of everything, and I move everything forward. I'm not just going to do one thing at the expense of others.
Yeah.
But if that's what you're looking for, I'm not your guy. So he moves to the next question, and I'm sitting there. I'm like, well, okay, I guess that worked or it didn't. We'll find out, and apparently it worked. So yeah, I struggled a lot with school. I struggled with my grades and priorities and balance. But I think the thing that got me through it was just determination, knowing that it had to be done. There was a duty to be done, a responsibility to my parents, a responsibility to those before me. I was, the competition between my siblings, my two brothers and I wasn't going to be the guy that didn't become an engineer, right? Being the youngest one. I'm not first generation to go to college. I'm second generation to go to college. So that really helped, right? Give me a context. But it was hard. It was hard. It wasn't a gift. But I think I got lucky along the way. I had good connections, or no, I shouldn't say connections. I had good friendships. I had good mentors, good advisors. My parents were on point with me all the time, and they kept me focused. I moved out when I was 18. I got my job when I was 23. So I say 5 years and 3 summers because Santa Barbara we're in quarters, right? So it was 3 quarters per year.
Right.
So I did 5 actual academic years, and then I did 3 summer sessions. So those 3 summer sessions actually amount up to another year.
Right.
So 6 years to graduate. I graduated. I had to leave. So I had to graduate because I was maxing out on the number of credits.
Yeah.
Because you've been here too long. You're not passing your class. What are you doing?
Yeah.
What do you want to do? And I graduated, and fortunate enough that I had gotten at one of the conventions, was at SHPE convention. I had interviewed with Kraft. I had interviewed with a couple other companies. I interviewed with a company out in Houston called Celanese, and I gotten a summer intern offer. That summer intern offer got me some experience. That when P&G came to Santa Barbara, that experience, that one line that was on my resume, made P&G interested in my experience, and we got to talking. And I wasn't expecting to even interview with P&G. I was looking to go back to Houston, and all of a sudden, I've got this one hook, this one little connection between my experience and what P&G was looking for, and all of a sudden, I've got a career at P&G 28 years later. And I can tell you, I can trace. I wish I could tell you which convention that was. I can trace back to. I remember the interview for Celanese at convention that got me that job, that got me, and again, all the way back up to where I am today. So, opened doors for me, and it's amazing.
Yeah, and I've heard some of our chapter members express themselves that when they start possibly doing bad in classes or not exceeding as much as they had been exceeding in, for example, high school, because it is a different, experience. Sometimes they begin to question themselves and they do begin to ask, is this what I should be doing? Is this right for me? Was I too greedy to think that I could do this? And I think that your experience is a valuable one because you're showing that it's okay to struggle, right? And that you have to just keep going and doing your best and that you can get through it and you can find success even though you might not have had the perfect 4.0 GPA. There is still success to be found, especially if you're involved in all the different activities like you were, where ship already a big part of your life, right? And so the fact that they're out there gaining these skills, it still provides that value to companies who are looking for those skills.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're building I don't just bring one part of my mind to work. I bring my entire self, right? So I need to bring all aspects of that, which is I need to be happy. I need to have that balance. I need to be able to lead. I need to be able to do technical. I need to be able to do work on my own. And that all comes with me to work. But no, you're absolutely right. The one thought that triggers, I heard some of the students, and I hear it often, and it's that idea of I don't belong, or what if I don't belong, or you said it. What if I got too greedy? I say, be greedy. Go after what you want to do. You might struggle to get there. It might not be the right actual solution, but don't for a second think that you don't belong in STEM, that you can't do this work. If you're interested, if you're innately interested and you're better at math and science than you are at English and history, you're an engineer, you're a scientist. Go find out what you want to do in that field, but you have every right to be at that table as a scientist. Maybe you're not going to be an engineer. That's fine. But go be the best scientist, go be the best physicist, the best chemist, the best, I don't know, entrepreneur, gadget inventor, whatever.
Yeah.
Don't limit yourself to the definition of being an engineer, but be passionate about science. And when you're passionate about science, that gives you the right to be at the table and that nobody can take away, right? And then the challenges become where do I work? What is my career? What technology do I want to work on, right? As a computer engineer, the solutions are infinite, right? Between hardware and software and platforms and, it's just pick. So you don't have to zero in on one and only go do that, which kind of goes back to that jack of all trades, master of none. I think that we as a culture are very adaptable.
Yeah.
We're very resilient for a lot of reasons. That plays in the business world. That plays in the workplace when you're resilient and when the boss says, hey, I got somebody, I got a project, I need somebody. I can do it, right? I don't know how, but I'll figure it out. I'm because I know I've done it before, right? So that flexibility, that persistence is innate in us. So when we struggle, lean back on that. Talk to your friends, talk to your family, share. Share good news, share bad news faster, right? So if you're struggling, share. Nobody wants to see you fail. At P&G, we firmly believe in many things, but two of them are that everybody wakes up in the morning wanting to be their very best, and that people are the most important asset that we have. And when you start your day off thinking that way about people, thinking that way about yourself, you can accomplish anything. And you know what? And even if you don't accomplish that day, it's you tried and you're going to get up and you're going to do it again tomorrow because it's possible. It really is possible. There's people with less than a lot of us that do way more. So I'm got nothing to bitch about, right? I got nothing to complain about because it's just a matter of deep breath. It sucks. It's hard. Dust yourself off, cry it out a little bit, and then next, let's move on. Let's move forward because that's what
that you fought with cancer. You
Yes.
Tell me about that experience. When in your life did that happen, and what was that journey like?
my journey. Very tight to ship once again. in a couple ways. So my whole life up until 2019, up until right about the beginning of September of 2019, I'd always thought I'm very blessed. My life's been easy. Yeah, I've had my challenges, but the fact is my life has been, it still is, very blessed. But it had been really easy to that point. I go off on a vacation with family and friends, and on this vacation, I get sick. I might come down with the flu, which was not cool because we're out in Oregon in wine country, and I'm at the Airbnb with 105-degree fever, and I've got the flu, and I'm feeling terrible. And lo and behold, 2 days I got to fly back to Cincinnati, which is where I lived at the time. And I go back to Cincinnati. I kind of get better, but I'm still not 100%. And I go to one of those urgent cares thinking I need a doctor to look at me.
Sure.
And the doc, or sorry, not even the doctor, the nurse practitioner, like gives me medicine. They do all the analyses and all that. She's like, this doesn't make sense. You should go get a scan. And I'm like, okay, I'll do it. She's like, no, go right now because you're doing nothing. You might as well go right now.
Right.
And I'm like, fine, I'll go. And that was in October. I think that was October 4th of 2019. I got the call that said, hey, you have something on your kidney. You need to go see a doctor. And that turned into a month of urologists and oncologists. And we think it's clearly a tumor. We're going to have to remove, obviously, right? So this is right before SHPE National 2019. And I'm the IPC chair, right? So the IPC chair owns opening up convention. It's the opening ceremony. The IPC chair speaks, right? And that's part of the opening ceremony. And I'm just got diagnosed with a tumor, and I'm preparing my speech. I'm getting ready to go to convention. I'm taking my recruiting team. This is all at the beginning of November, and I'm in the middle of October dealing with I think I just got diagnosed with cancer. And I call up my vice chair and I tell Nora, I say, Nora, I'm not going. A decision, I'm not going. I'm going to get operated. We're going to go and try to remove the tumor.
Yeah.
We get operated the Monday after convention. It wasn't like I could show up, do convention, and then fly home and then be ready for surgery the next day, right?
Yeah,
So
of course
I had to not come, which was heartbreaking because this year will be my 27th. In Salt Lake City will be my 27th convention. I've done most of my 33 years and I can't go. So I'm really bummed, but I'm dealing with this. And I go through my surgery. Convention goes on fine, but I go through my surgery and the doctors tell me, hey, we have to wait about 2 months for all the scar tissue to go down and everything to all the swelling to go down to see what's what. And in those 2 months, I have a follow-up scan, and one of my doctors says, oh, let's do a brain scan. It's like, we don't need to, it's not going to show anything, but let's do a brain scan. I get a brain scan, and sure enough, time passes, and all the scans come back, and I get diagnosed, and the biopsy comes back, I'm sorry. Along with the scans that come back, the biopsy comes back. And the biopsy comes back with, I always get this wrong, positive margins, which means that they didn't get all the cancer when they removed the tumor. So I go through the scans, and the scan shows that I have lesion in my brain. So I'm now having gone from not knowing I had anything at the beginning of October of 19 to I'm stage 4 kidney cancer, April of 2020. So we're all getting into pandemic. It's at the very beginning of pandemic, and I get diagnosed stage 4 cancer. They immediately put me on immunotherapy, and the immunotherapy is going to be the thing to save me. And it puts me in the hospital 2 months later.
Wow.
And at this point, immunotherapy has destroyed my colon. My body is attacking itself, and we're talking about doing a colostomy, which is when they remove your colon.
Wow.
And I said no. And I said, nope, I'm not ready. This is no. I don't know, but no. Maybe too much information. I'm not ready to poop in a bag. No. Right. So not going to happen. And I leave the hospital at the end of, this is in June, first time I go in towards the end of June, leave the hospital. I go home, and I'm home for July, and I'm recuperating. August rolls around, and I go back into the hospital. I get an infection. And when I go back into the hospital, you go through this set of scans, right? CT scans, MRI scans, and the doctor comes to me and says, the cancer's everywhere.
Oh my God.
You have 2 months to live. Get your stuff in order. And this is August of 2020, end of August of 2020. Of course I'm destroyed. Of course, I'm like, I'm not done. I'm not even just turned 48, 49. And I'm not done. No, I don't accept this. But I leave the hospital barely able to walk. I'm in bad shape. I'm in bad shape. I go and do the worst thing that I've ever done. I think the worst thing I'll ever have to do, which is go buy your own funeral plot when you know you're dying. So I didn't have that done. I was 48. I was going to do that until my 50s or 60s, do that later in life, right? I had to go buy my funeral plot because 2 months later I was going to be in the ground, and I had to pick, like, where do I want to sit for forever? And it was like, no, I don't want to be under this stupid tree. No, there's some weeds over there. I'm like finding the stupidest reasons to not pick a plot.
Sure.
And I'm at the cemetery. I've got a cane. It's pandemic. We all got masks on. I can't even make it to half the grave sites that the sales lady wants to show me. Finally, I'm like, the first one, I don't care. I'm done. Right.
Yeah.
And my thinking is like, and it's not in 6 weeks, it's right. Because it's the beginning of September. September goes, like, kind of fight it. I'm getting a little bit stronger, but not really. And it's almost like every 2 months, like it was in June and then August. It's the end of October, and I get an infection, and I'm back in the hospital. And I'm like, oh, like, write your eulogy, write the goodbyes, right? Because this is it. And at that point, they put a drain in me to help with this infections that I keep getting. I'm loaded up on steroids to try to get the infection to come down, but I'm off my chemo. And while I'm doing that, well, guess who likes steroids? Cancer does. So the cancer's growing. And it's this battle of knock the infection down, grow cancer, knock the cancer down, infection grows, right? And I'm dancing between the two. That's October. And somehow I come out of it and I go back home at the end of October. I'm like, oh, dodged a bullet. Because I still got tubes sticking out of me and I'm not feeling great. And I go home, and at this point, I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to go out on disability, because up until October, I was still working, which is like the stupidest thing. But I finally go out on disability. I'm staying at home, trying to get healthier, and then December rolls around right before Christmas. Go back into the hospital. I was in the hospital for my birthday. Like, I got out like day before my birthday, which really sucked. I'm getting out of the hospital the 23rd of December. Again, another infection. The cancer has slowed down. In some places, it's kind of my body's fighting it. It seems to be that what I'm doing is working, but it's still everywhere. It's still everywhere. And my focus is these infections, because with these infections, the cancer's not going to matter, right? If I keep getting these infections. So I go home in December with a new tube sticking in me so I can have IV medicine put into me every 12 hours. Nurses coming every day to the house. This is January of 21. The vaccine for COVID is on the horizon. Everybody's talking about it, and they're talking about first responders and teachers and this, that, and the other, and immunocompromised. And I'm thinking, score, I'm going to get the vaccine. January turns into February. 2 months later, and I'm like waiting for it, and like clockwork, I get an infection again. I'm like, are you kidding me? But by this point, I'd gotten smart enough, and I'd talked to my doctors, and I'd realized that this is my journey, not my doctor's journey. And I started taking control of my health. And I told my doctor, I'm like, we're getting these infections every 2 months. I need to have pills at home, antibiotics at home, that the minute I get this infection, I start popping those pills.
Right.
I'll come see you the very next day. I'll come see you that afternoon, but I need something to do before I see you, before you give me a prescription, because at that point it's 2-3 days later and the infection's already taken. It's like, I don't know. I convinced him. And that's what stopped it for me. I was able to get ahead of the infection, gave me more pills. We had the analysis done. Yep, you're on the right medication. Keep going. And beat that infection. So I didn't go in the hospital in February 21. March of 21 rolls around. Vaccines are out. But I'm not on the first pass. But it didn't matter, because at this point, I couldn't walk. I was so weak. I started my journey off at 230, 235. It was down to like 160, 158. Couldn't walk. It would take me, lived in a 2-story house. It would take me 15 minutes to go from my bed upstairs to walk downstairs to sit on the couch downstairs.
Wow.
I'd stop on the landing of the stairs to catch my breath. I mean, I'm walking like a 105-year-old man, shuffling my feet. I'm miserable. It's just, I'm waiting to die. I'm literally waiting to die, because I'm not getting any stronger. And every morning I'd come down, I'd look over at the kitchen and go make myself something to eat, because I needed to eat, right? I'm not eating anything. Oh, the medicines make everything taste like metal. It's just everything you hear of is happening, and it sucks. And I'm walking by, and I look over the kitchen. I'm like, I don't have the energy. I know I need to eat. I'm not even hungry, like not even a piece of toast, nothing. I'm like, whatever. I go over to the couch, and I look at the couch, and it's full of pillows and blankets and remotes and water bottles and all my medicine. It's another day laying on the couch, and it sucks. But I get there, turn around, right? Kind of like to get myself in reverse position, right?
Yeah.
But facing the couch, kind of a deal. And I just gotten to the point where all I could do was let myself fall backwards, because I didn't have the strength to sit down.
Yeah.
And so I let myself fall backwards. I land and I lean back and I let out the sigh, and I'm kind of panting. I'm winded and I'm depressed and I'm miserable. And I hear, as true and clear as I'm speaking to you right now, I hear this voice in the back of my head that says, if you don't get off this couch. And it was like, stat up. I got to do something. And I'm not going to sit here. I'm not done today. And that's my mantra. I'm not done, not today. Not today, not tomorrow. And I get up. I don't remember if I got any food or not, but I remember that I went and got my bag ready. I got a duffel bag ready, because I wasn't going to stay there any longer. I wasn't going to sit there and wait for it to find me. So I started calling the doctors. I found out at what time the vaccine was going to be available for me. I was like the second person in line at the hospital that morning. I showed up at like 6 a.m. For an 8 a.m. vaccine. 2 weeks later, I'm the first person in line. Like, I'm getting that vaccine because I had decided at that point that I wasn't going to leave my care in the doctors I had. I was going to go find MD Anderson, the Cleveland Clinic, Mayo Clinic, you name it. I was going to go find the best doctors in the world to tell me what I needed to do. And as weak as I was, as feeble as I was, on April 8th, I got my second vaccine, I think it was. Like April 9th, I jumped in my car. I drove down to Houston. where people weren't flying. You're not flying. I've got stage 4 cancer. Nobody's got vaccines. I'm not getting on a plane. So I threw a mask on myself and I drove 2 days to go see doctors at MD Anderson. And I couldn't even get into my car. No joke. I drive a Toyota 4Runner. I get into the car, and to get in, it's like you got to climb in, right? And I can't lift my arms. So I get into the car, and to close the door, I swing my hand out and I grab the bottom storage thing and I lean in because I can't pull the door. I lean in, and with that, the momentum comes and it closes.
Yeah.
Now I'm sitting in the seat, steering wheel's in front of me. I can't lift my hands up to grab the steering wheel. I have to grab it from the bottom and, like an inchworm, move my hand all the way up top.
Wow.
All the way up top. And got in my car, drove 1,500 miles to Houston to get with a doctor to insist upon MD Anderson that you will take me as a patient. That opened up other ideas. I went out to California, to Santa Barbara. I went out to Stanford to see what I could find, and I uncovered a therapy called dendritic cell therapy that very much like the movie Deadpool. It's not approved. It's in experimental trials or clinical trials for breast cancer now, my understanding, but not approved for my type of cancer. So I find this clinic in Scottsdale, Arizona. My neighbor had suggested I read into this therapy. I find this clinic in Scottsdale, Arizona, where I go and I spend 3 months in a holistic therapy, integrative therapy, where I get pumped full of naturopathic remedies. I do a lot of, diet and kind of body cleansing. I go do this therapy in Mexico because it's not approved to be done in the States.
Right.
I do the therapy in Mexico. It takes out white blood cells, takes out your own white blood cells and trains it against your specific type of cancer, and then they transfuse them back into you.
Wow.
And then these white blood cells go off and search for the cancer. And sure enough, I felt it after they transfused it back into me. The cancer was in my liver at that point, and it's attacking it, and I can feel it.
Wow.
And coming out of this in 2021, September of 2021, I go and I continue to have scans, but in September of 21, my scans start to show significant improvements. In November 21, my doctors are like, I don't believe it. March of 22, they're like, still don't believe it. You're stable, but you still have a lot of cancer. Fast forward to my last scan here in May, and my doctor's like, when I came back from Scottsdale, so I went to Houston, MD Anderson, got a doctor, didn't like what they told me, so I left and found this therapy. When I came back from Houston, or from this therapy to Houston, I had a different doctor. That doctor said, if you ever do this experimental therapy or anything, I'm going to put you as a patient. Well, A, you can't do that. But B, like, whatever, I don't care. So I said, sure, yeah, whatever. I won't do it again. I'm like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, I'll do it tomorrow if I have to. It's not your call.
Right.
But that was in November of 22. Fast forward to May of 23, and he's like, yeah, that therapy that you did, what'd you do? And now he's asking, he's curious because all the scans have come back that says, like, you're stable. You're so stable that we don't think this is cancer anymore. We think these are cysts.
Wow.
And these cysts, well, where'd these come from? Well, they're scar tissue, and what is scar tissue around all the cancer lesions. And the doctor's like, well, if that's the case, then what attacked your cancer? Because this isn't how the body usually heals cancer. Well, remember, I did that therapy. So now my doctor's all of a sudden very interested in what I'm doing.
Wow.
But it's been a ride because all along I've had ups and downs. I've had the immunotherapy and and the medicines I was taking, and the cancer did a number with my body. I'm definitely not as strong as I used to be. Muscular wise, I'm just not as strong, right? But my digestive system, my internals aren't as good as they used to be. So I still have incidents. I still have, trips to the hospital here and there. It's been a lot less, but this therapy did something.
Yeah.
But along with the therapy, it's not just what I did for my body. It's also been like the emotional journey, the support. I have an amazing wife. My love for her and the family has driven me, is what got me off of that couch. And the one thing that really helped me throughout it all was, this is going to sound so silly, but at beginning of pandemic, how many of us jumped on chats and Facebook and reconnected with friends and, hey, I haven't talked to you forever. Why? Because we were all forced home and we were so bored.
Right.
Right. And there's only so much Instagram and so much TV and all that we're like, okay, fine, I'll go talk to people. Right. And through the beginning of pandemic, I got invited on a couple chats that I've made some lifelong friends. And these were people that I'd never met. I'm talking to in February of 20. It's a ship chat.
Wow.
It's a handful of ship. We had the big chat. There's a big chat for convention for ship professionals. That's it's been going on for years, right? Yeah. And it was a subset of the people in this chat that got along, that we were always texting each other. And I didn't know. I was kind of paying attention to the bigger chat, and somebody invited me. Hey, I kind of like you. Hey, come join this other chat. And it was through that chat, through 5 people that I found people to talk to. I found a reason to wake up in the morning and send stupid memes, see what memes were being sent to me. Find it. When you pick up your phone and you go look for that text or you go look for something, it was like that. When I had nothing to be excited about, I was excited about. Ship saved my life. Ship, I came back, and so we didn't have convention in 20. I came back in convention of 21 as a professional. Well, actually, I came back as an individual because I wasn't even working. I was still out on disability, but I'm like, I'm strong enough and I want to go see my friends in Orlando. So I went to convention as a participant, which I've never done since I hadn't done since I was in college.
Yeah. And
just to see my friends, to see the people that I'd been seeing for so many years come up to me that I'd only see once a year. Oh my God, it's good to see you. Oh my God, where you been? Oh my God, what happened to you?
Yeah.
It was just a lot of like, so glad you're here. Like, what, like, of course you got to be here, right? It's like, you've been doing it. So again, I felt like I belonged, and I needed to fit in, and I needed to come plug in. So for me, even my cancer journey, this got shipped, woven through it, right? Whether it was at the beginning with IPC, whether it was in February of 20, right as I was getting diagnosed, and the friends that I made that helped me through my journey, my coworkers on my ship team that reached out to me while I was out on disability, coming back and knowing that I was coming back to this, getting a place to tell my story. I told it at RLDC in Region 5 last year, not Leadership Live, but the year before. And I had a member come up to me and say, I'm going through something very similar. So we have in SHIP people struggling with disabilities. We have in SHIP people going through these very real life journeys that aren't only academic and professional. So I'm keen on taking my journey. And that's one of the things that I want to do this year at convention, is bring back and find a way to find something within all of us at SHIP. How can we help our familia with disabilities? How can we find ways to support us? Because we're quick to look outside, we're quick to look at industry, right? But in this space, I think we need to start inside. So I'm blessed. I'm blessed that I got cancer. I don't wish it on anybody. I wish I wouldn't have to go through it, and I know what's coming, but I'm blessed that I have it, because now I have something else I can share and something else that I.
Well, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for sharing that, because you're 100% right. There are other people who might be going through life-changing events that are really impacting their ability to even just function on a day-to-day basis, and they're not alone.
Hello.
They're not alone. And especially if you're a member of the Ship Familia, you have so many people that care, that are out to support you and are going to be there with you every step of the way and want to see you succeed and win. And so I appreciate you being open. I know it's not easy I'm sure that when you're telling that story, you relive lot of those moments. But I appreciate that you're willing to tell it, because you know that by telling that story, you're going to help others.
Yes. The other thing that I say often is that, and this isn't me, I forget who said this, but it's never been more true, that if we, it tore up saying this, that if we reach great heights, it's because we've stood on the shoulder of giants. I believe that with all my heart, because the reason I'm here is because Rod Garcia was here, right? Because he did what he needed to do, and now we're doing what we need to do. So yeah, we're not alone. Takes a village. You can throw in all those phrases, right? But yeah, we're familia. We're here for each other first, right? We're here to see each other succeed. And I'm happy to talk this with anybody at any point, because you're not alone. We're not alone.
Perfect. Well, I can't think of a better way to end this interview. Thank you so much for taking the time and energy to do this with us and sharing your story, because now it's saved for posterity. It's going to be shared with the world, and hopefully somebody's going to connect with it, and I'm sure they will. And they're going to use this as energy that they need to keep on going and fighting for success.
And that's all I can hope for. So thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you to SHPE for everything that it's been.